Hi everyone. For my presentation, I will talk about identity, specifically who can decide how people choose to identify themselves. It's a complex topic, and I can't speak about others' experiences, so instead I've critically analyzed 2 movies and 1 book using a Marxist lens to help answer my essential question. Who gets to decide how people can identify themselves, and why this is important? People take their identities very seriously. Our identities identify who we are, what we are like, and our social connections and the groups to which we belong. So if I tell you that I'm a white male born into an upper middle class family who has had everything handed to him and has had no experience with discrimination, these racial, gender, occupational, relational, and group identities will tell you a lot about me. These are all parts of myself that I cannot change, which goes for the rest of the population as well. You can't change your ethnicity or your family history. So what is there to this argument exactly? Well, my friends, there is a lot more to identity than your sex, ethnicity, and personal preferences.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Let me explain. Your identity is also part of your social class and where you stand on the political scale. This part of your identity can be potentially changed. But do the people in power want it to be changed? Yes and no. So, to answer my essential question, your identity should be your choice and your choice only. However, those in power will try and change certain identities through unconscious information. This is important because it tells me the government only views some identities as necessary, and the others are outliers not worth changing. They aren't worth changing perhaps because of many reasons: gender, beliefs, or maybe others. The other thing they might try and do is influence us to label each other based on our own social classes, to get us to fight amongst other and rank each other and believe we have our own place in society and we can't change that. Let me explain. Your economical stance tells a lot about how you act. Your political stance can even give us a good idea of your race and sex. But as I said before, who can decide your identity? Well, according to the government, they can. When deciding your identity, government officials will use this information stated above to target people and spread propaganda and false information to change identities into the preferred ones. Take the Purge, a dystopian society where all crime is illegal once a year for 12 hours to release all the hatred in people. However, this is not true, but everyone believes it because the government tells them it's true. Evolution is selected for deep respect for authority. Society compounds this by organizing and supporting this tendency into what Charlie Munger calls a dominance hierarchy. You are taught to respect authority from a very early age. You see authority figures everywhere as a kid, in teachers, parents, older siblings, coaches, grandparents, and politicians. The real purpose of the purge is a lot more sinister. One quote from a radio host in the movie is, "The purge is about the elimination of the poor and those unable to protect themselves." The eradication of the so-called non-contributing members of society, ultimately unmasking the economy. It is working. The economy is flourishing. By doing this, the Founding Fathers, the name of the government in the purge, believe they will have more true patriotic Americans. A patriotic American is a white middle-class citizen that can afford protection and weapons to purge. The middle and upper class will purge the lower class, who are viewed as parasites that latch onto the rich. Killing them will give the middle class a sense of pride and convince them they're true American citizens. That's why in the movie, the purge is heavily marketed towards the rich and the middle class. By deciding citizens' identity, the government will have more control over the population and be able to market to the masses easier. Further extending my research into real-life America today, I discovered that pro-nationalism material is marketed 70% more to the middle and upper class than the lower class, fitting the notion that the lower class doesn't identify as true patriots and aren't part of the necessary identities viewed by the government, even in real life. Sound familiar? Remember a certain orange man? Yes, I'm talking about Trump. Trump's supporters largely consisted of white, middle, and upper class American families, and that's about it. Trump wasn't interested in winning the hearts of other ethnicities. They didn't fit his notion of true Americans. Only white people did. On the contrary, your social class is something that the government would prefer to keep the same. After examining Animal Farm, a book about animals who rebel against their human owners and hope to create a society where all the animals can be equal, free, and happy. Ultimately, the rebellion is betrayed, and the farm ends up in a state as bad as it was before, under the dictatorship of a pig named Napoleon. Under Napoleon, the animals are subjected to communism, or animalism as it's called in the book. Napoleon believes all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. What Napoleon means is all animals are equal, except for the pigs, who rule over the other animals. This highlights class inequality, as the rules of communism do not apply to those in power. Another quote that caught my attention was, "All animals will forever have the same role." This means that animals born into the lower class will always be in the lower class, and those born into power will inherit power. Much like the purge in Animal Farm, the government subjects the animals to propaganda and makes them believe they are only capable of their assigned role. So, does Animal Farm really only portray the horrors of communism, or does it critique capitalism as well? I also analyzed Parasite, and surprisingly, they're actually similar in some ways. Parasite tells the story of a poverty-stricken family, the Kims, who cunningly placed themselves in the service of the parks, an obscenely wealthy household. The Kims were born into poverty, and they have no way to escape besides latching onto the rich, hence the name Parasite. Much like Animal Farm, those born into the lower class have basically no way out, heightening that no matter the political system, there will always be inequality. Parasite also portrays the notion that the lower and upper class can't intermingle, and portrays the upper class as being superior to them. For example, when Mr. Park believes his driver had sex in his back seat, Mr. Park is horrified by the idea that he would cross the line by going to his back seat, where he, the employer, sits. Then when he hires Key Tech, he comments favorably on the fact that his new driver never crosses the line. This turn of phrase is a euphemism referring to an employee's ability to know their place, not presumed to be on an equal plane with their employer. This is evidence that we are falling right into the government's trap by labeling each other based on our class. We fight each other, not the system, so they remain in power. So, to conclude my video, I will give a quick recap of my essential question. I answered my essential question by using the movie The Purge to explain how the government will change the identities they view as necessary into ones which fit more of a nationalist role. And I talked about how Animal Farm and Parasite depicts the wealth gap and how your class will never change, no matter the economic system. This wealth gap creates conflict between the classes, so the government will never lose power.